A quick introduction while everybody is coming online and getting settled in. So good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar. I'm thrilled to have you all here with us. Thank you so much for taking the time, either if you're joining us live or if you're watching the recording back. My name is Jess. I'm a marketing manager here at This Is School. I'll be your host for the session along with Claire. For those who don't know Claire, she's been a teacher of German, Spanish and French for 16 years and has 12 years experience as a subject lead. She's currently a teacher development lead at a comprehensive school in the Midlands. Before we dive into the presentation, I'm just going to do a little bit of housekeeping while everybody's coming online. Firstly, to make sure everyone has the best experience, everybody's microphones and cameras will be off. If you have any questions, comments, thoughts during the session, please do use the chat box. We also have a Q&A box. We'll be reserving time at the end of the session for Q&A, so feel free to pop them in at any time that they come to mind. If you put them in the chat as well, I'll be picking them up, and then I'll be coming back on at the end and talking to Claire kind of through your through any comments or questions you have. I don't know if everybody wants to give it a quick test just to make sure the chat box is working for us. And if you want to find the chat box, make sure you're posting to everybody and let us know where you're tuning in from today. It's always a nice way to start, see if we can get any familiar names and locations. And obviously, while we're doing that, just to let you know that we are recording today. Everybody will receive a recording from myself at jessica@thisisschool.com. So do keep an eye out on your inbox for that. And we're also being joined here by Veronica, who's our head of sales. She's just popped on there as well to get involved and make sure that she's going to be helping me answer your questions and be in the chat with you today as well. So I think that's everything. I think that's everything from me. I'll come and say hi in the chat. I can see everybody kind of popping up in there. And without further ado, I'll let Claire take over.
Lovely, thank you very much. Hello everyone, it's really lovely to be here again. So thank you very much to Jess and This Is School. I hope everyone's doing okay. I appreciate that for many people probably on now, it's quite ironic doing a webinar at the moment about speaking when a lot of us have got speaking exams in full flow. So I think it's great that you're willing to give up your time to listen in live if that's what you are doing, because I do realise it's a very busy time of year. So as Jess has said, I am very much still a teacher. I think there was a mailing that went out that said I was a former teacher of languages. Now I'm still very much a teacher. I had sort of a panicky message from a friend who's a teacher saying, Claire, are you still teaching? No, I absolutely am. I am a part-time teacher because I've got little people at home who take up a lot of my time. But I currently teach German and French, but I do also I can teach Spanish as well. My current role is very much in teacher development, working with trainees, which I absolutely love, both across the school and also across the trust for MFL. And I've also done a bit of writing and consulting before for the Association for Language Learning, BBC Bite Size, etc. And I'm about to start a new role alongside my teaching job as an associate lecturer in education, which I'm really looking forward to. If you would like to contact me at all, the best place is probably Instagram. If you heard me talk last time, I'm going to do a bit of an Instagram plug. We've got a really great community over there for teachers of languages, particularly called MFL Insta, hashtag MFL Insta, and I am Leo Languages over there. I do also I'm starting to use LinkedIn a lot more, so you can find me Claire Wilson on LinkedIn. So without further ado, I will crack on. So I'm going to try and be a little bit clever, and I'm going to try something a little bit more interactive. I don't know whether this is going to work. If it doesn't work, then we can just chat about this in the chat box. But I wondered if you could have a go at either scanning this QR code if you have either a tablet or phone with you, or you might be able to type in menti.com and put in that code. And I've just got a couple of questions for you about speaking in languages, about your what sort of the skills that you teach in languages and how often, and also how you feel about speaking. How do you feel about speaking practice with your learners? So let's see if this will work. I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to just bring up the presentation, and I'm hoping, if I say it might be being a bit too clever, we will see. Let me put hang on a minute, I'll put the QR code back up actually, and then I'll have a look, see if it's worked. But please do let me know in the chat if you're having any problems with that. And as I say, we can just chat about it. And I'll present the Mentimeter in a moment. So I'll just give people another couple of minutes just to try and scan that. So yeah, I'm just interested in which skill you think you use the most in lesson from listening. So one being the most often and 4 being the least often. So listening, reading, speaking and writing. And then my next question, hopefully on the Mentimeter, is what are your general feelings about doing speaking practice? I'm just sorry that I'm bringing the chat up. I'm just checking to see if it's come through. Thank you for letting me know. That's great. This is the bit I'm never too keen on. I'm fine while I'm on the PowerPoint, and then as soon as I have to try to do other things, let's have a look. Let's see if this is working. Don't know if anybody's had any joy with this. Have a look at the ranking. Okay, looks like it might be working. There we go. So we're just having a good idea here. So first at the moment seems to be reading, listening second, speaking third, writing fourth. I'm hoping that you can see the ranking that I've got in front of me now. It's quite interesting actually. I've done this before. I've done this poll before in previous either on Instagram. I think I ran a poll, and then I think I've done this in previous talks that I've done. And generally, speaking and listening tend to be the least practice skill. So I'm not surprised at all by speaking being quite far down there. I'm quite surprised at the moment by writing being the least practice skill. So it might be something that I might ask for a little bit more context about in a moment, just for interest really. But yeah, at the moment definitely can understand that speaking is quite a low one there. Oh, writing is just overtaken. So yeah, definitely seems to be the more passive skills at the moment that are the most practiced. Fab. I'll leave that running a moment. I'll see if anybody's had any chance to, probably not yet. I think people are probably, but just if you do get the opportunity, if there is, or even if you want to put this in the chat, just be interested to know what you think about speaking. Why, as I say, I'm not surprised at all to see that speaking is quite low there. Obviously, speaking in a foreign language is, I think, so important and something that we should be doing all of the time. Of course, I do understand why there are difficulties with that, and I will talk about that in a moment. But I'd just be interested to see, why do you think speaking practice is something that you do the least with your students? And as I say, if you can't see this on the Mentimeter, just pop it into the chat and we can have a look. I've got a few coming up now. Yeah, so okay for quick, short activities, but struggle with more extended answers to help prep for speaking exams. Yeah, it's kind of that sort of spontaneous speech, isn't it? But at GCSE, are they ready to do that? Obviously, there is still an element where we do have to get them to prepare their answers, which wasn't the intention with this, I say, newer GCSE. It's not new now, but I do remember, I think I'm on my 4th spec change now. So I do remember when this new GCSE came in 2016, and the idea was to try to get students speaking more spontaneously, but I don't think we're still kind of quite there yet, are we, with it? Takes too long, students feel self-conscious. Yes, difficult with large classes to keep students on task. Most practices in MFL clubs, that's interesting, at lunch outside school, but larger numbers in classes make it hard to evaluate individually. Yes, absolutely. Trying to do that speaking assessment one-on-one in classes with the time is just practically impossible, isn't it, really? Love it. That's really great to see. Lots of pair work, speaking games one-on-one with the assistant. Okay, and after, great. We teach using the target language, so there are lots of opportunities to do short bursts of speaking. Reluctance from students and lack of oversight of small groups to ensure they're still on task. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, very similar kind of comments here, like doing regular bursts. Some students are self-conscious. I encourage pair work. Great. Yeah, again, for me, there are no surprises. I'm sure there's no surprises for you either. I just think it's quite good just to talk about these and just to have the opportunity to discuss some of these things. I personally really love it. I will stop the Menti now. I'm just gonna have one last look at the ranking here. Yes, so speaking's coming last. So yeah, I mean, very interesting that writing. That one has surprised me actually. I thought that might be one of the most used skills actually. You know, because we do get students, I assume, writing in the target language quite often. But yeah, no, really interesting. Thank you very much for doing that. So let me move on then. So yeah, I completely agree. I just think that speaking, you know, this is why we learn a foreign language, isn't it? We learn a foreign language to be able to speak in the target language. And I just think it's absolutely wonderful. But I do completely get it. It is a struggle. It is a struggle with larger groups. And I think, as people have already sort of suggested, there is that tendency for students to be off task. There's a lot of behaviour management issues there. I think, I don't know if anybody said this, but there is obviously that tendency that, okay, off you go, do the speaking in German, French, Spanish, but then they'll just start speaking in English, and you sort of think, well, you know, that's quite a lot of lesson time that I'm losing there where they're not doing any target language. I've put COVID on there. I still think this is relevant. I've been having conversations with quite a few people this week. I've been in a couple of other schools this week, seeing the trainees, and certainly finding with some of the younger learners, there is still quite an effect from COVID, and that kind of, I guess, independence perhaps, and the self-consciousness maybe. I don't know if that's maybe increased since COVID. As teachers, have we lost have we kind of lost a bit of practice maybe? I know that obviously during COVID, speaking was one of the skills that we probably had to kind of ignore, because obviously for obvious reasons, you know, we didn't want students kind of speaking or working closely together. So has it been hard to get back into the habit of doing speaking in lessons? I certainly think that was something that we experienced sort of in our school, you know, a couple of years ago when we tried to start getting things back on track. So I've still left that on there because I still do think that's quite relevant. Learner confidence, students feeling self-conscious. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. And I think as well that, you know, again, it can take a long time. If you're doing a speaking activity and you've got to build students up for that, you've got to explain it, you've got to give students the language that they need, give them plenty of practice. If they do go off task, then it can take a bit longer than you expected it to. And ultimately, you know, we do have a lot of content to cover, don't we? You know, even at Key Stage 3, but certainly at GCSE. You know, for teachers in England. And sometimes I feel that maybe speaking is the one that's the easiest to kind of leave and ignore. I still absolutely do maintain that it's so important that it is something that we should be doing as often as we can. Getting those learners confident speaking in that language is so important. But I absolutely do understand why it's a struggle. And, you know, I hold my hands up and say, you know, I'm not always sure that I do include speaking as much as I would like to, even though I love it. And I do have to remind myself, okay, I've got to get these kids speaking in the target language. So I hope in this webinar that, you know, if you have got any energy left for the next week or two amongst speaking exams, to do some speaking with your other groups, or hopefully if you haven't done your speaking exams yet, that I can give you a few ideas just for a few last minute things before their exam. All of these, if anybody knows me, I'm all about my quick wins. So generally they are low effort, high impact ideas, things that hopefully you can take into your lessons tomorrow. Some of them require a little bit more prep, but there's nothing that requires too much prep at all. And it's very much for beginner learners up to more advanced. So in England, we're looking at Key Stage 3 up to Key Stage 5, but from beginner learners up to advanced. So that's the aims. So I'm going to start off with kind of just the simple stuff. I think we probably maybe overcomplicate things sometimes, you know, and I think if anybody did watch my last webinar, you'll know that in my very first classroom, I didn't have the option to use PowerPoint. I had an overhead projector, a pen and a textbook. So a lot of these ideas where I probably wouldn't need a PowerPoint, I didn't have that opportunity. So, you know, I'm going back to what I used to do sort of 16, 17 years ago when I started training and started teaching. It's just really simple things, you know, just questions around the room, you know, ask a student a question, then get them to pick another student, ask the question to them, they answer it, they then ask another student in the class, you know, just doing that kind of whole class speaking, throwing an object, perhaps, if you're comfortable to do that. You know, I remember we'd throw like a little teddy around, just a reminder of those real basics, really. Going around and doing surveys in their books, you know, what's your favorite subject, going around and asking each other, getting students out of their seats, role plays, My students, certainly younger students, absolutely love a role play. If you're doing about, you know, ordering in a restaurant, then get them to act that out. Get them to act out ordering in a restaurant, and they still love it. And you still can get some of the groups to come up to the front and present it in front of everybody else. And none of these require a lot of prep at all. They're very, very simple, and I think students really, really do still love those sorts of things.
I'm so sorry, but speaking of PowerPoint, perfect segue. A couple of people just asking if you're going to be resharing your screen.
Oh, is it not sharing? Okay, well, I'm glad you've said that. Let me have a look what's gone on there then. This is that's because I've gone on to Mentimeter. Bear with me a second.
I'm sure everybody is very, very used to these things happening.
Yeah,
but yeah, if there is a visual.
Let me try again and reshare. I think it's because I'm sharing my desktop, and I thought it was strange that I couldn't see myself. I know that sounds really weird. There we go. Is that better? Can you see it now?
I believe so. I'll
Test.
I can see it, so I'm gonna believe that we're back on.
I'm glad you stopped me because I would have kept going.
Perfect. I got a couple of thumbs up from people there, so thank you so much. I'll disappear.
That might happen a couple of times because I've got a couple of other things where I'm sort of whizzing onto a website. So do let me know if you can't see it, and then I'll sort of stop it and reshare again. Great. So yeah, so do keep it simple. Thank you, Jess. And because I think there's still some of the absolute best activities really are where, you know, it's just, they don't need to take long either, do they? If you've got a question that you're working on in class and you can just ask random students, bit of cold calling in lesson, getting everybody involved, it shouldn't take too long at all, and it's really, really great practice, really great modelling. Okay. Probably just another thing I want to say on that as well, just going back to role plays particularly, because this is something that I do. But one of the things that I found to be the most effective thing with speaking is take students somewhere else. I often, with a role play, if I've got groups in the class who are working on them, and it is safe to do so, and obviously it depends on your policy as well. The classroom that I had last year, luckily there was a playground just outside that none of the other classes could see it. I could still see them, and I would let a couple of the groups go out there and have a little practice, and they absolutely loved it. I've also, like during COVID, I've taken them up onto the tennis courts to do some speaking before. It's amazing what a difference just taking them to a different space in the class in the school can do. And I've still got some of my students still say, oh, remember, Miss, that time you took us out onto the playground to practice those questions and answers. And, you know, and it can just really engage students a lot more, make it really memorable. Obviously, just check with your school policy that you're okay to do that, and just risk assessing. You know, if you have got students working elsewhere, you need to make sure that you can see them and you're able to check on them and still check your group. But you know, that is really, really simple idea just to get them a little bit more engaged in speaking, really. Okay, so how do we start to build our students' confidence then? Because I think a lot of it does come down to their confidence, doesn't it? You know, I think even now, I like to think I speak German quite well now, but it isn't my native language. I still get quite nervous, especially if I've not been to Germany for quite a long time. So it's the same for students, isn't it? And I think share that with them and tell them that it's okay to feel nervous, that it's okay that this is a foreign language to them. It isn't supposed to be easy. It isn't supposed to come really naturally to them. And so it's okay to feel nervous, and it's okay to have a go, and it's okay to make mistakes. And I think one of the best things to have come out of the you know, I say more recent MFL pedagogy review, which was actually in 2016 by NSELP, is this increase in the use of phonics. And actually they found back in 2016 that although many teachers recognise the importance of phonics, actually in practice, maybe they were just being taught at the beginning of the year, and then they were just kind of being ignored. And I know I certainly was guilty of this. I'd always do a great sort of phonics alphabet activity at the beginning of year 7, and then I would forget to revisit phonics, you know, throughout the rest of the year, and actually throughout other years as well. So yeah, I really think it's great that phonics is becoming so explicitly taught, that it's a part of the new GCSE in terms of the reading aloud and dictation. So I think this is a great way of beginning to build students' confidence. If they know how to say it, or they've got a good go at being able to say it in the target language, then hopefully that, you know, they're going to want to do that. So the way that we've done this in our school is we have a phonics focus every half term. So you can see here on our knowledge organizer that we have the phonics that we're going to focus on, and then we sort of, with retrieval practice, we bring in phonics from previous terms as well. So I think it's a really good idea, probably rather than to overload them all with the phonics in the first few lessons, is to maybe drip feed them. I think it's useful to have a little table perhaps in their book, a little visual in their book, so that they can keep referring back to it. But in terms of that practice, maybe just break it down. We tend to find the phonics which are more kind of common in the vocabulary that they're going to be using that term. So once we've got the phonics focus, one of the things that I do nearly every single lesson with Key Stage 3 is a really, really simple activity. I have shared this quite a lot. So if you do follow me on Instagram, you've probably seen me share this before. But it's flash phonics. It's a simple choral repetition activity. I literally just show them the phonics or the sound, and then I will show them a word using that sound. To begin with, in the first couple of lessons, they will need me to say it first, and then they will repeat after me. But usually after sort of 3 or 4 lessons of doing this, they can do that on their own. And this doesn't take long at all. And I've tried quite a lot of longer phonics activities, and I still find this, just that choral repetition, just that constant practice, that every single lesson going over the same sounds, as I say, sometimes bringing in other sounds as well from previous topics. I find this one of the most effective things to do, and it takes like two minutes maximum of my lesson, usually at the beginning. And I love choral repetition. Again, I'm quite old school, really. I love to say that, come on, let's prove that we're the best French class on the corridor. Let's try and be really, really loud. I want all the other groups to hear how amazing you are at your French phonics. And you can, really, really play around with them. Another phonics activity that I really like is give or take. You've probably come across this before. None of my ideas are completely original. They're all sort of magpied from other people. But this is where you'd split your class into 2. And a student from that group would pick a word from a particular table. So let's say they go with aller, and they're practicing the A sound. And then that team would win 2 points. The problem is that underneath some of them, hopefully I'm going to reveal one in a minute, they will actually lose some points as well. And in some of them, they actually swap points with the other team. They lose all of their points. So it's quite a game of risk, but it creates quite a lot of engagement in the class. They want to say it because they want to get involved, and they want to find out what's behind that word. And it works really well. It doesn't have to be just for phonics, but I do find it works really well at the beginning of the lesson just to practice those sounds. Now I am going to have to just stop my PowerPoint because for some reason it keeps getting stuck on that one. Okay, hopefully then we can see this one. Again, another one that you've probably come across before is the detective game. Another one, I think my classes would do this all lesson long if I let them. It's a very, very popular one. Again, you don't have to just do this with sounds, but I think it works better doing this as a phonics activity. You can do full words if you want to, but the idea is that you have a detective who goes and stands outside the room. And then you pick somebody in the class to be the murderer. So it's like wink murder. And that student will do some kind of action to signal that we need to move on to the next sound or the next word. So usually they'll scratch their head, or they might cough, or they might tap their pen. And the detective will come back in, and the group will start repeating the sound. So this is the German sound, sp, 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 and they'll keep doing that until the detective does their sign, and then we'll move on to the next sound. So that's in German. They'll keep doing it, then the murderer will scratch their head, and so on. And the detective has got to try to decide who is the murderer, who's the person that's doing a sign that's kind of, making everybody move on to the next sound. Great, loads and loads of practice, loads of repetition. They don't realize that they're doing that because they're playing a game, but it's really, really great for the sounds. I do tend to have to kind of get involved with this quite a lot, because if I leave them to it, the sound sort of trails off and disappears. So I kind of have to keep bringing them back to make sure that they're pronouncing it properly. But then at the end of the list, you can then give them actual words using the sound. So Sportzentrum, and they keep repeating that sound. If I'm not happy that they're saying it properly, I'll interject and I'll try to sort of get them back on track. But it's another one that they really, really enjoy, and probably one that you've used before. But just as a reminder, it works really, really well, I think, for phonics here. Okay, moving on slightly from phonics. I'm sure people have loads of phonics activities, and if you do have anything, please do share it in the chat, because I'm always looking for phonics activities that don't, again, last too long, because as we've said, I think sometimes some of these things can go on longer than we actually have. So quick, snappy activities, if you do have any for phonics, please do share them in the chat. So this is a similar take on the detective game, but this is actually saying full sentences this time. And this is Je suis James Bond. This was an idea I got from Sabine Pichot. She shared this idea and I thought it was a really, really great idea. Very similar, but this time students write a sentence to answer a question you have been working on. So let's say you're asking the question, what do you do in your free time? Students write their answer in the target language. You send a detective outside, and then within that class, you nominate a James Bond or maybe 2 or 3 James Bonds. The detective then comes back in and they pose the question in the target language. Everyone shouts their answer, which is usually an answer to the question, what do you do in your free time? But the James Bond or the 2 or 3 James Bonds all shout, Je suis James Bond. And the detective then has to listen and try to work out who the James Bonds are. So it's just, again, a slightly more interesting way of practicing a question and an answer that you've been working on in class. Okay, I'm sure that, again, this isn't a new one for anybody. Previously, I've kind of whizzed past this one because I just assume that people know this. And I thought, actually, no, I'm gonna do it as a reminder because I don't know if there are trainees or sort of early career teachers who've maybe not come across Trapdoor. I'm sure you have because it's an absolute fail-safe of an activity. But I just wanted to remind people of it again. So not technically speaking in the sense of producing spontaneous speech. I imagine some people could argue this is more of a reading activity, but I think anything whereby we're getting students working on those oracy skills, working on that pronunciation, speaking out loud, reading out loud, I think is only going to be beneficial to building up that confidence in speaking. So Trapdoor is great. The idea is that you give students different options, give them a sheet, they circle an option from each one. So for example, if this was my sheet, I'd be hiding it from my partner and I might circle, ich wohne in einem Doppelhaus. So I live in a semi-detached house, so I might circle that. That is in the mountains, in den Bergen. In meinem Haus gibt es 3 Badezimmer, there are 3 bathrooms, etc. So I'm going to tick or circle a different option from each box and I'm going to hide it from my partner. And then my partner has got to guess my story. So they would start to read out. They would say, ich wohne. And if they said in einem Doppelhaus, I would say, ja. They would pick it and then they can keep going. Das ist, and then they might say, an der Küste, by the coast. And I would say, nein. And then we would swap. So I would then try to guess their story. They can only keep going with the story if they've got it correct. And the idea is that they always have to start from the beginning. So when we swap back, that student would have to start again and try to remember my story. So ich wohne in einem Doppelhaus. Das ist in den Bergen. Ja, keep going. In meinem Haus gibt es 3 Badezimmer. Ja, keep going. And they keep swapping until one of those students has managed to guess their partner's story from beginning to end. It's a good one to do with the class as well, so you can model this first of all. So I'll stand and say, right, I want you to guess my story first. So you can pick individual students. They really like doing this as a class. They get quite competitive with this because there'll be a student that's got it wrong and then they'll get their hand up and they'll want to have a go. So it's a really good idea to model this as a class first, and then you can give them the opportunity to do it in pairs. But I think if you ask, I think any languages teacher would probably agree that this is one of those fail-safes. I don't think I've had any classes where there have been many students who haven't been engaged in this. They all want to get involved. I think because it provides that support, they're not needing to speak spontaneously. They do have the option of reading off the sheet, but they are actually also doing lots of practice, lots of memorizing of vocabulary and key phrases as well, which I think, can only be good, can't it? In a similar vein, Mastermind, I've stolen this from Kate Languages. I used to do some language classes with her in an evening, so please do check those out if you want to practice your languages. But she does this, which is a really nice speaking activity. Again, it's not really something that's producing spontaneous speech, but it is a good one to get students talking to one another and avoiding speaking in English. And again, they have their own table each. I think this works quite well if you use sentence builders as well, because you need lots of different options and different types of sentences that work. So I've used this example here, which is all about school subjects in Spanish and how you feel about them and a justification. So I would have this sheet, and again, I would circle or I would cross one from each column. So it might be, I might circle me encanta, I might go la historia, history, porque es fascinante, because it's fascinating, y útil, and useful. So I would circle one from each, and again, my partner has got to try to guess my sentence. So they would have a go. So they might say, me encanta el francés porque es importante y fácil. And I would then probably say to them, you've got one correct. If it's a bit too difficult for them, you might be able to tell them which one they've got correct. Okay, you've got me encanta correct, but you haven't got the other ones correct. And again, they can keep taking turns, practicing sentences until they've guessed each other's sentences. So hopefully that one makes sense. Please, if anybody wants anything repeating, please do let me know, and I'll try to explain it much better later on. Okay, I shared this one in the last webinar on quick wins, but I think it's quite a good one as well for, again, just getting students moving around, talking to each other, trying to avoid too much sort of chatting in English. Although this does require some translation, I think there are different names for this. I call it swapsies, but this is where students have a sentence in the target language on a post-it note or piece of paper. And they've probably taken this from a list of sentences on the board. So I did this recently with my year 10. We've been talking about uses for mobile phone, how they use their mobile phone. So I gave them a list of sentences to pick from off the board. They picked one and put it on their card, and then they wrote the English translation on the back. Because they were year 10 and I wanted them to keep practicing, I actually got them to do 3 separate sentences. They went around and they find a partner, show their partner the English. The partner has to translate it into German. If they get it right, then that's you can have a go at translating, the partner can have a go at translating their sentence. They both get it right, then they can swap them. And then I say to them, if you don't get it right, you're not allowed to swap, you've got to go and find somebody else. So it's getting students just walking around, practicing translations, practicing speaking. And again, another one that I really like that gets them out of their seats, gets them speaking, not spontaneous speech, but another one that works well, I think, there. Okay, so another tip. So earlier I said a tip for getting them speaking is taking them elsewhere in the school or taking them outside. Another one I find that works well, and I think this is why things like Trapdoor and Mastermind are so good, is almost tricking students into not realizing they're actually speaking. So I think anything where we can make it competitive and where they're kind of accountable for speaking in the target language is always going to work really well. So this is something I had a year 11 group a couple of years ago. We were getting quite close to speaking exams and they just were not focusing. They weren't practicing. Some were very prepared. They'd got flashcards and they were ready to go. I had others who just couldn't be bothered. They just didn't want to spend the lesson practicing for their speaking exam, the general conversation. So I was racking my brains trying to think of a way where I could get them to practice. So I thought, you know what, we're going to have a go at noughts and crosses. So I came up with a worksheet. Sorry that this is quite blurry. I've sort of screenshot this quite a few times and used it in various different places. But I've got a worksheet full of noughts and crosses grids. And on there, I would have questions on each little square. I'd have a question in the target language that I wanted them to practice. And usually it was just the same topic. So I think this topic is on holidays. So I'd have loads and loads of different grids with the key questions all in different places and the different grids. And the only way that they can get the nought or cross with their partner is that they must answer that question in the target language. And I think this makes them accountable because they're so competitive. I think they find that, you know, their partner will not let them have that nought or cross if they've not answered in German or French or Spanish or whatever. So again, this works really well, I think, because they're forced into that situation. There's no way their partner is going to let them get that nought if they just speak in English. So, you know, what do you normally do on holiday? Or normally I go to Spain and I find it great. If they're saying that in the target language, then they can get their nought or their cross. So it's another great way of adding that competition, but they're kind of practicing their speaking at the same time. And I've done that again recently. I actually did it as a tense activity whereby I wanted them to practice a topic in all the 3 different tenses. And it worked really well and students were really focused on that. And I think this works well for GCSE, but I've used it in year 7 as well. So it's a great one, you know, for all different year groups. and maybe want to try, if you have got still speaking exams to come in the next week or two, and you're pulling your hair out a little bit with your year 11 and then just not focused, maybe just, you don't even need to have a worksheet prepared, just stick a noughts and crosses grid on the board and number them. Put the questions on the board numbered. So number 1, what do you normally do on holiday? Number 2, where did you go last year? Number 3, where will you go in the future? And then on a whiteboard, they can just draw the grid, put the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, exactly the same as you've got on the board. And then they can just answer the questions that you've got on the board. So it's one of those that, although I've got it on a worksheet, this can be just done really, really easily with a pen and a set of mini whiteboards. Okay. Another one is Connect4. This is something, again, I've stolen off Kate Languages that she uses quite a lot. I've used this quite often for practicing grammar and repetition of grammar, but it can work quite well for speaking topics as well. I do this similar to how Kate does it. I'm sure if you're fancy enough with PowerPoint and you can use macros and things, then you'll find a way of making it so that you can use the little counters. I just, I don't have it in presentation mode. I just have it in normal sort of PowerPoint slide mode where I can drag the little circles over. But this works quite well because you're getting that repetition. So, you know, if you do this as a whole class, then you can split the group into 2. This is quite good to get students thinking about speaking about these topics in different tenses or adding opinions. So it might be that they decide to choose the topic of school and they decide to include a time phrase. So in German, that's quite tricky because there's a word order issue there. So for their team to be able to get their little coin down that slot there, they would need to give me a sentence, an accurate sentence on school, including a time phrase. And obviously the idea is that they keep playing against each other, they can block each other until you get 4 in a row. This is another activity. You could print this out and get students working in pairs. If you've got counters, they could do this with each other, so practicing it you know, more small scale as well. But it's one I tend to do more as a whole class really, and it works well. Am I on the time? Another one for practicing general conversation at this time. If you've got anything left in the bank to have a go with, you could do pass the parcel. So have students in groups of about 5. I don't think you want many more than that because I think they'll become too disengaged, I think. So 4 or 5 would probably work best here. Give each group an envelope with speaking questions inside. This might be a specific topic that you're practicing at the time, or it might be a mixture of topics, or you might give one group a topic, another group a different topic, etc. Stick some fun music on in the target language. Ask students in their group to pass around the envelope. Once the music stops, student who's got the envelope picks out a question and they have to answer it in the target language, and then you start again. So it's just a slightly more interesting way of practicing those speaking questions. Does require obviously a little bit more effort with that, but I think it's one of those things that once you've created it, you can then use it every year. Okay, so this has always been one of my favourite speaking activities, and I have shared it again quite a lot, so apologies if you've heard this from me before. This is the wheel, so it's very much like speed dating. And in my previous school, we had an area of the school that for some reason had almost a circle painted on the floor. So we all used to do it, all of us in languages, we all used to, when we were practicing a question and answer scenario, we would take our students outside and we would get them to stand around this circle. But you can do this anywhere. I've taken students up onto the tennis courts to do this. You could do it in a classroom, you know, if you move all of the tables out the way. But usually this is one of those that I think probably works best in a larger space if you have that opportunity. So they're in pairs. Pair them up before they leave. That's the best thing so that there's no confusion. So A's and B's, they go outside or to the tennis courts or wherever. They face each other. So A's perhaps on the outside, and then the B's will face their partner in the inner circle. And then it's entirely up to you how you do this, but the students on the outer ring might be the ones asking the questions to begin with, and they will ask the questions to their partner. And then every now and again, you can stop them and say, right, everybody in the inner ring, I want you to move one step to, you know, to the right or clockwise or whatever. So they get the opportunity to practice with another partner. You might then decide that the inner circle are going to ask the questions and the outer circle are going to answer. lots and lots of ways that you can do this, but the idea is that they keep going around and they're working with a different partner each time. And the good thing about this is if you are actually trying to practice and build that spontaneity and build that sort of those memory techniques, that memorization of the vocabulary and the answers, then often I'll have students starting with their books and with their resources, and usually when they've done it 3 or 4 times, they're starting to know these answers off by heart. So it works well for that, I think. So it's kind of taking away that support. But yeah, very similar to speed dating. I like this because I find it easier to communicate what they need to do. I've done speed dating before where they're all in a line and we all get really confused when one's got to like go from one end to the other. And I find it's a lot messier in a circle. For some reason, it's something so simple, but it just works a lot easier, I think. And then a really simple, quick way is just using a wheel spinner. So at this stage now, where I'm hoping that students are quite prepared now for their speaking exam, I will just stick a website like Wheel of Names on the board. I often do this in the lesson. I think you can probably prepare it beforehand. I'm not sure. I think you can save it. I'm not too sure, but I usually just do this really, really quickly in lesson. I'll get Wheel of Names up. I will type all of the different topics or even questions into the Wheel of Names, spin it, generator. Right, off you go. Here you go. Here's your question. What do you normally do on holiday? Talk to your partner. Off you go. And it's just a really quick, really fast, really pacey activity to get them speaking and practicing. Okay, so a lot of those were really sort of mainly for practicing for those students who have already prepared their answers. So as I say, not really spontaneously, but it's just things to kind of get them practicing, get them memorizing. Few ideas now just to get them a little bit more engaged with the speaking, just to build their confidence with speaking, certainly at GCSE, so a slightly more advanced level. A few years ago, I was teaching a lovely year 10 class, and they said to me, "But Miss, when are we going to actually learn how to speak actual German?" And she kind of, the girl who asked made quite a good point, really, because I think sometimes we do ask students some rather bonkers questions, don't we, at GCSE? So, you know, the one that always springs to mind is, will you get married in the future? Are you going to have children? Describe your ideal partner. They're just really strange questions to ask a 14 or 15-year-old, I think. So sometimes some of the questions I think are very abstract for students. So they just wanted to have a chat. They were a really engaged group. And so I said to them, right, okay, well, that's what we'll do. We'll have a go. So I came up with this activity, which I call Quatschen, which if you speak German means literally to talk rubbish. And what we do is we sort of build up a repertoire in our books. So usually in the middle of their book, you know, the stapled bit of their book, we build up things that they want to say. So I tend to give them a sheet to start them off, and it's usually basics like some really quite fun ways of greeting. So perhaps some more colloquial greetings in Germany. I will give them reminders of how to say, "How are you?" because they seem to forget that because they don't always have the opportunity to practice that since year 7. So lots of very basic question and answers type phrases. And then they will say, "Miss, how do I say this to each other? And how do we do this?" And then we'll build up more. And they have the middle of their books, which is just full of just random phrases to get them speaking. And then I just stick a silly, cheesy target language song on, fairly quiet in the background, but loud enough so that they don't feel too on the spot and too pressured. And the only rule is that they have to speak German. So it's very low stakes. They go up, they literally, I'll say, just imagine you're wandering around the street in Germany, you just bump into somebody, you start having a chat with them. And they can take their books as they get more confident. They might want to try it without their books, but they literally bump into somebody, greet each other, ask them a couple of basic questions, have a bit of a conversation, and then they'll move on to the next one. And they really seem to like this. I had a student, fairly disengaged student, a couple of years ago say, "Miss, that was the best lesson ever," because there's no kind of, there's no stakes involved. It's just chat, just speak. Don't ruin this opportunity. I always say to them, you know, if you start speaking in English, then we won't do things like this. And they love it because they don't feel like they're doing any work. And I've also done things before where I've had forfeits for them, like silly little things. If any of them start speaking English, and they're very quick to tell me if they're speaking in English, and you know, we'll do silly little forfeits and things. But generally it's worked really, really well. And I think it just it builds up their confidence before you have to do the slightly more high stakes stuff, certainly at GCSE, where they're having to do the photo cards and the role plays and practice their general conversation, is that they can just go around and just basically say whatever they want to and speak about things that they're interested in, I think, which is really important as well. Yeah, and I've had learning walks on this before and observations, and it's always gone down really well. And I think the fact that you've kind of got the music on in the background as well, it sort of, yeah, it kind of, I don't know, it just, I think they feel a little bit more confident because they can't really hear each other either. It's, you know, I can't hear them very well. I'll sort of circulate, but I like to leave them to it and just let them do it and just let them take control of it. And it's always really nice to see when they're doing this well. It's a really, really nice thing as a languages teacher to see. Okay, so a little bit slightly more formal now. So obviously in the English GCSE, we have to do role plays. This will still be part of the new GCSE as well. And this is just an idea that I took from, this was Adam Lamb, who's Senor Cordero on X, and also Vincent Everett, which is who is at the Everett MFL on X. So thanks to those for the idea. And I think they call these speaking Toblerones. So just little sort of triangles of paper where on one side you have got the bullet pointed student responses, so that the thing that, you know, the card that they will get in the exam. And then on the other side, they've got the teacher version. And it's just really good because they can just create that little sort of Toblerone between them. The one student can do the teacher script, can read that out, and then the other student can read their, you know, the student part of it, the bit that they've prepared. It's just something really simple that works to get them practicing with each other, I think. If anybody does need, I have got a sort of a template of this on PowerPoint, because it can take a little bit of getting your head around which way round to put the text. So if anybody would like me to send that over, please do let me know, and I'll get that emailed out to you, because it's, once you've got the template, it's really easy just to keep filling in new role plays. Okay, and then the photo card, which obviously is another element to the GCSE. Before I start introducing the slightly more scary exam style photo cards, which aren't very exciting, let's be honest, they're a bit demotivating, again, a bit bizarre sometimes. We have a little bit of fun with describing photographs. So I would say find some fun pictures. There's quite a lot of free image websites such as Pixabay, so please do check those out. Just check that, you know, that you can use the royalty-free ones. And I will give them, you know, the mats, the language mats with loads and loads of vocabulary on how to describe the photographs. And you can start to include a few extra questions like you would get on the speaking exam as well. So, you know, there's this silly phase here. You know, you could get them to describe the picture, the ones that, you know, the one on the beach, and then you could say, oh, where do you like to go on holiday? Where did you go on holiday last year? You get the idea. Or the little dog here with the football, they could describe the picture. Okay, well, what sports do you like to play? Tell me about a sport that a friend likes to play. Again, you get the idea, just a bit more exciting, a bit more engaging, I think, rather than sort of, okay, here's the exam, this is what you've got to do in the exam. I think at GCSE, we can get very, very bogged down with what we need students to do for the exam. And I think we forget that we need to develop that love of wanting to speak, not just because they're going to hopefully get a really good grade out of it at the end. Okay, so this is what I'm going to try. I'm going to try and show you on the internet. We'll see if it works. So this is another one that I think is really engaging and gets students describing what they can see. And this is using Google Earth. So thank you to Joe Dale, who I'm sure you've come across, who shared this idea a few years ago, I think, when I was watching lots of his fantastic webinars during COVID. And if you check out the I'm feeling lucky option on Google Earth, and then use Street View, you can find a random place in the world, and students can just describe it. And you can either do this as a class. So I've done this sometimes at the beginning of a class as a starter, where I've wanted students to work on their describing, and I've just gone onto Google Earth. It just finds a random place in the world. Again, I'll show you in a minute how that works. And then we've literally kind of like plonked, you know, the person in there, and we've described it. And I've also done this in Computer Room, where they've done their own, and they really, really enjoy it, and it's really engaging. So let me just try to show you. I'm going to have to just stop my share, I think. Sorry about this. I'm just going to try and there we go. Just going to try and share. I'm hoping you could please let me know if you can't see this. I am on Google Earth now. Oops. Hopefully you can see the Google Earth. And if you search on Google Earth, you should see at the bottom, there's a little dice called I'm Feeling Lucky. And it will zoom you in somewhere randomly. Now, this is great because it's taken us to Valencia in Spain. So great if it is Spanish that you're doing. And then you can drop the little man into, it's probably not going to let me do this now, but the little street view man here we go. Let's have a look. Where's this taking us to? This is looking quite exciting here. Fantastic. So we've got quite a lot we can talk about here. You can sometimes have a little move around until it's a bit more exciting, but I'm just going to stop it here. And then I might take a screenshot of that, or I might just leave it on the board. And then students have got to say, you know, in the picture, there are trees, there are motorbikes, there are litter bins, there is a modern building, there are houses in the background, you know, and that kind of thing. So again, it's just a bit of fun. They find it quite funny sometimes, especially if there's people in the pictures as well. And yeah, really, really great, really, really a lot more engaging, I think, than just showing them a picture from the exam board. So that works quite well. You could, if you wanted it to be more culturally relevant, then I think you could say, right, I want you to find somewhere in France, Spain, Germany, you know, wherever. But I don't usually do that. I just want them to find a picture to describe. So that's one option. And then another option is to, if I just stop share, is also window swap, which is another really great way of describing. Just bear with me a second. If I can find this one. It might be on my desktop, sorry. Let me have a look, see if I can find this. I did have it already, but it just takes a while to find it. Here we go. So again, hopefully you can see this. So window swap's quite a nice one. Open a new window somewhere in the world. Again, completely free. And this is somewhere in, I think it just told me, Maryland, USA. And there's lots that they can talk about on here. You know, they can talk about the weather. They can talk about, you know, the trees. They can talk about what sort of house it might be, whereabouts in the world it is. So again, just to get them talking, really, and just to make it a lot more engaging. I think it is anyway, and we always have quite a lot of fun when we use these. Okay, so I'm just aware of the time. I will just keep going for a couple more minutes. Hopefully you can still see this. So just a couple of A-level activities just to finish on now. This again could be used at GCSE, I think, but this was a really great idea from Madame Mass on Instagram, who was struggling to get her students talking about the topic of, I can still hear, hang on, I can hear window swap still going, bear me a second. Where is it? Let me find it and just stop that a second. There we go. Okay. Yeah, so she was struggling to get her students talking about the line for the you know, the literature and the film topics. So she put lots and lots of options on the board, and she just got a soft ball, and she just got students to throw the ball at the board. Whichever one it landed on, students had got to talk about that topic or that theme for, I don't know, 30 seconds, a minute, something like that. So I thought that was a really great idea. I think I'm going to whiz on from time out because this takes a little bit of explaining, but I have put, I've tried to sort of put it almost like board game instructions. So I hope that this one makes sense. This is just a really good activity for breaking the ice at the beginning of the year, because for anybody who teaches A-level or more advanced students, there's quite a transition from GCSE. Often they're with students that they probably don't know very well, maybe students from other schools. And I find that it takes them a little while to start speaking. So this is just an activity that I play that sort of breaks the ice at the beginning, gets them chatting to each other, and it always works quite well. So it's quite a bit of fun. So I'll leave that, that will be sent out obviously with the PowerPoint slides, so you can have a look for that for yourself. Also, quite often at A-level, I will do Eine Menge Fragen. This is from Lightbulb Languages. It used to be Sunderland School, so thank you for these. This is a really, really great activity. I'll just have this grid. They don't see it. They will pick a number, and I'll just give them a sentence starter. So if they pick number 14, they'll say to me in German 14, and I will say ich höre, I listen, and then they've got to finish the sentence. So it's just a good way of getting them talking at the beginning of a lesson. And I have one of these for year 12, so the first year of A-level, and I have a more advanced one for second year of A-level. And although I got this from Lightboard Languages, I think this is something that you could create quite easily yourself with sentence starters that are relevant to maybe the topic that you're doing, or a variety of topics that you're doing that year. Silent debate is a good one to build debating skills. Although they're not technically speaking, I think it's really good to help them sort of deal with a more sophisticated topic before they have to talk about it orally. So I'll have A3 paper around the room. Each student will have a different coloured pen, and each piece of paper will have a different question on it. And they will have to go around the room and they respond to that question, and they respond to each other's remarks. And they cannot speak, they have to write about it. So everything has to be done in the target language. Even if they want to laugh at something that they say, or show surprise, they'll have to do the exclamation marks or smiley faces. Everything has to be done in written form. So yeah, as I say, although it's not strictly speaking, it's just a really good way of building their confidence debating on a topic, because they've got a little bit longer to think about it. This obviously works well if you've got a larger A-level class. I have had some quite large A-level classes in the past, but I only have 2 currently in my year 13, so they've just had one between them. So I will give them a question on an A3 paper between them, different coloured pen each, and they will just debate it, in written form themselves. So it doesn't have to be for bigger groups. It works for 2 as well. And then thinking hats is a really great way of helping students consider things from a different perspective. If you've ever come across this by Edward de Bono, it was a thing a few years ago. It's a bit of fun. I get students to actually make party hats at the start of the year. So 10 minutes just to make a little party hat that they put on. And the idea is that they take on different roles. They think of things from a different perspective, but it can really, I think, help them to lose their inhibitions because they're taking on that role, because they're all sat there in a silly party hat. So the way that this might work is the way I do this. So if you're wearing the white hat, it might be that you're telling me the facts about something. So I've just done this on festivals in year 12. So tell me some facts about festivals in Germany. The person with the yellow hat, sorry, I've noticed a typo there. They will need to give me some advantages for festivals in a particular region in Germany. Somebody with the black hat would have to maybe give me the disadvantage of a festival in a certain area. The red hat will maybe give me some personal reaction. It might be where they would like to go. Would they like to visit a certain festival in Germany? What do they think about them? And then the green one would be some suggestions. So it might be a question like, what could the local government do to help promote a festival in a particular region? And then the blue hat, we usually do that together and we summarize it together. So we usually put the blue hat in the middle. And again, if you haven't got a large A-level class, I have 4 currently in my year 12. So, one of them will just take 2 hats and they will do 2 sides of the argument. You may wish them to get them, maybe make a few bullet points first of all before they actually develop their argument. And then another one you could do is put some controversial statements on the board and get students to react to those. That can be quite interesting, coming up with things that are really controversial that you think that most students are going to disagree with, and then give them a few phrases to support them in coming up with an argument to sort of counteract it. And then I would like to share lovely Erica's website. If you are a Spanish specialist, you definitely need to check out Spanish and Umbrellas. She has loads of free resources on just developing speaking at A-level. She's got GCSE resources as well, but she comes up with some really great resources for A-level. So please do check those out. I just wanted to give her a shout out because she spends a lot of time, I know, creating these, and they're, well, at least last time I checked, they were free. I think maybe some of them you have to pay for, I'm not sure, but I think they're really, really great. And finally, I don't know if I dare go there, but chatbots, AI. I don't know how much people are experimenting with AI at the moment. This is a Spanish one that a trust colleague sent over. It is pretty good, I'm not going to lie. If students have got access to computers, in school or tablets or whatever. This is one by the Burgess Institute, and you have a chatbot, so talk to whoever. So this is me just chatting to Sarah earlier. Hola Sara, she replies with hola, en qué puedo ayudarte hoy, and just literally having a conversation with her, and it's pretty amazing, to be honest, scarily amazing. And I'm sure there are ones for German and French as well. So if you're willing to sort of start venturing into AI, definitely check that one out. And I think that is it. So apologies, I have taken the full hour. Hopefully they have given you a few ideas just to kind of take into your lessons next week, or maybe if you're done with speaking and you just cannot think about doing any more speaking for a little while, hopefully they're things that you can try, later on in the year or from September. I'd love for you maybe in the chat just to share a couple of activities that you like to use that maybe I've not shared that would be a good reminder, or something that I would like to learn about, or just a takeaway from this session. But thank you very much. Thank you for sharing your time.
Much, Claire. That was so interesting. I think so many ideas to take away as well. And yeah, I think everyone's probably rapidly writing notes, but I promise we will get the recording, and we will attach the presentation to that as well for everybody. I think you made some really interesting points. I think definitely that idea of letting students know that it's okay to make mistakes at the beginning. We talk quite a lot at this school about the idea of sharing your own language learning journey as well. Whether if you're a native speaker, you have also your own language learning journey. So wherever you're kind of coming from, I think that can always help students remember that actually it is new and it's okay to make mistakes just like it is in any other subject. I was interested, I had a little question. I don't know if anyone has any questions. If people have time, etc., more than welcome, obviously, to get in touch with Claire directly. But there seems to be quite a key thing here there's a kind of combination between letting students make mistakes, but also the element of competition you touched on, I thought was really interesting. And yeah, that idea that making it a fun and a game with that element of competition can be a real game changer for a lot of students.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of trickery involved, isn't there? We do have to trick them a little bit into getting them to do it. I think as well, something that I didn't mention is there is this worry that some students will be off task, but I think the point is that there will also be a lot of students who will be on task. It's like with anything, isn't it? If we set students on a piece of writing or some reading, there's always some students who are going to be off task. And it's the same with speaking. I think it's a lot more obvious with speaking because it's very obvious that they're maybe messing around or they're chatting in English. But I think just kind of give yourselves a little bit of a break that, it's so beneficial to those students who will do it. And I think with practice and with routine, if you make this a common part of your lessons, they begin to know they know your expectations, they know what they've got to do, and don't focus too much on the students who are off task. Think about all those students, when you're looking around, that are speaking and that they're speaking the target language. And I just think as a teacher, to look around a room and see students speaking the language that you're so passionate about and that you want them to be speaking in, just seeing them do that, I just think there's nothing better than that, really, is there?
Yeah, such a moment of reward. And I think especially when you get to that point where there's a lot of spontaneous speaking as well, when, like you say, not having to trick them quite as much is always been I remember doing lots of role play during my GCSEs, and it making a huge difference, because it's that idea as well, isn't it, like you say, that real language compared to textbook language, which is obviously something we're really passionate about at this school as well. And I think that's what students are looking for, well beyond kind of tourist chat. I think I've seen it referred to in a couple of places, that idea of you obviously want to be able to go and do that, but you also want to go and have a conversation. Yeah. That's the aim. Amazing. Well, I can't see any questions coming in. Like I say, if anyone does have questions, you're more than welcome to reach out to Claire directly on Instagram. You're also obviously welcome to come and follow us at This Is School. You can find Claire's previous webinar, which is low effort, high impact. I always almost get that the wrong way around, which is obviously complete opposite. Low effort, high impact ideas for your language project.
It's the only way we can get through life.
And that is available currently on our YouTube, which you can find on our website at www.thisisschool.com. If you are interested in finding out a bit more about our platform, please do visit us there. We offer everybody a 14-day free trial. And we have inbuilt speaking support with recording and assessment tools, which you can align to your curriculum, whether you're in the UK or US. It works in both countries or internationally. And we also include a range of prompts inspired by our videos featuring native speakers. So like I say, the idea of real world language that students can then respond to. You can also record your question for them, record your assessment of them in your target language. Really flexible, however you want to use it. So if you are interested in hearing more, do have a look at the website, or keep an eye out for my email, and I'll include some details and screen grabs on there. Before we go, obviously, we'd love to know what you thought about today's webinar, so please do let us know on social media, or again, you can respond to the email that gets sent out. This is part of a wider series that we're kind of wrapping up at the moment, so we'd love your feedback to be able to inspire kind of future sessions, to know what you want to hear about, so we can best support you in your classrooms. So thanks again, everybody, for taking part, whether you joined live or whether you're watching this on recording, and we really look forward to seeing you in the future. Have a great evening.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Thanks, Claire.
Bye.